And at that point, the grand conductor, the Antichrist, is here for all to see. And if you really think Obama is that crafty, then you need a mental exam. And it's just craziness. And again, nobody on the left is having this power. Yes, are there evil people on the left who've done things? Yes. But I don't see all a herd of people just bowing down and just doing whatever, or just snatching up people or doing these things. There have been incidences, yes, the transgenders who beat up that lady in New Zealand, that, the craziness, the few riots that happened with BLM, because it wasn't as much as the conservatives wanted to be, just as the left made any interaction during the protest, that the police had, all the police were just massacres and just evil, just basically Nazis. That was very few. The police were not as violent, and if they had to resort to violence, it wasn't that often. So everybody on both corners has sat there and lied. And if you're lying on people, you're evil. Just point blank, period. That's bearing false witness. You ought not lie. And what does the Bible say about liars? Liars should be cast into the pit of hell. You aren't good for lying and carrying on lies. I don't care who it's against, whether it's a cop or somebody else. You don't get to lie because you vote a certain way. You don't get to lie because you believe in a certain religion. And also, I would say anybody who believes in the rapture cannot believe by faith alone. Because the rapture basically says if you aren't preparing, which is doing, it's preparing is a work. I don't know what it is, but it's work. It's an unknown work. That you will be left behind. So you can be a Christian, and I remember this when one of my older siblings' husband told me about the Left Behind series. Oh, well, he wasn't living right. So, meaning he was still a Christian, but he just wasn't living right. So, that's not by faith alone. That's faith plus works. So, God will, overlook you or leave you behind if you don't do faith plus works, which is believe, yet prepare. So you can't be a true Protestant and believe in the rapture. So that doesn't make a bit of sense to me. As I grew up as a Protestant. Now, I don't believe fully in Protestantism, nor do I believe fully in Catholicism in the sense that it's faith alone or works plus faith, because faith without works is dead. And I don't believe that anything that I do, or could do, gets me into heaven. I'm a Christian because I believe in God, yes, but I should also be acting on it. And I also don't agree with those who are hyper-grace, who use grace as a condom, that I can live any horrible, sinful way that I want, but since I prayed a prayer, that I'm a shoo-in for heaven. I don't agree with that. When I became a so-called Christian, because I don't believe in the concept of giving my heart to God, or whatever that is called, because is that not me choosing God? But whatever. So that's not a Calvinist view. Anyway, I was 4 years old when that's what it is, the sinner's prayer. There's no such thing as the sinner's prayer in the Bible. There's no proof that Paul never prayed the sinner's prayer. David never prayed the sinner's prayer. John the Baptist never prayed the sinner's prayer. Jesus never spoke about the sinner's prayer. He talked about, how to pray, your Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. But that's not the sinner's prayer. That's the Lord's prayer. That's not the sinner's prayer. But when I was 4 years old, I prayed the sinner's prayer. And I can tell you I was not a Christian. I walked away from the faith at 17, did not live like a Christian at all. A lot of that had to do with the church, but I wasn't a Christian. I'll tell you that right now, and I don't care who else says, well, you prayed a prayer, there you're a Christian. I don't care. I wasn't one. I wasn't a Christian. Had no knowledge of Christ, had no knowledge of the Bible. I wasn't a Christian. So if the so-called rapture had come, I wouldn't be there. If I had died, I'm pretty certain I wouldn't be in heaven. I was baptized at 18 and didn't have a choice in that. That's a whole other story. Um, you know, I just wasn't a Christian. I wasn't a Christian, I'd say, until maybe my mid-20s. Really? And even now, I've not prayed a sinner's prayer. It's nowhere in Scripture. Mary never prayed a sinner's prayer. Joseph, no one I know has, in the Bible, prayed a sinner's prayer. Nobody. Jesus never taught a sinner's prayer. Moses, none of them. None of them. Abraham didn't pray a sinner's prayer. That's all man-made. That's a man-made belief. This is why I don't agree with evangelicalism, and evangelicalism, even non-Christians will say that is not, they're not Christians. It's a political party. But I don't believe in what they believe, and I don't necessarily believe all in Protestantism in the sense of that is a man-made doctrine. It just is. I can tell you, I was not a Christian. I don't care how many books somebody writes. I was not a Christian. I turned away from the faith. I didn't want anything to do with Jesus, anything to hear about Jesus, especially what happened at that church. Didn't want a thing to do with it. So how was I a Christian? Because by their definition, if you turn away, you weren't a Christian to begin with. So in their words, I was not a Christian. I was not a Christian. I wasn't. So that man-made doctrine, it's not biblical. And I read also, well, of course, the rapture belief system came from an 11-year-old girl through her vision at a revival. So we all know that's accurate. And then a lot of people picked it up, including D.L. Moody. That shocked me, because I have connections to Moody Bible Institute. So that makes sense why a lot of that caught on. And to me, why would we be participating in a belief system that, number one, isn't biblical, meaning it's not in the Bible, and we're supposed to only believe sola scriptura, not anything else? That's why a lot of Protestants say Catholics aren't Christian, but here we are believing in a non-sola belief. So, number two, it's from a kid. Number three, it was only founded in the 18th century. Number four, that's charismatic belief systems where somebody prophesies, and if we go to the Scripture, it's not there. So why isn't the belief system ignored if that's what we're supposed to do? Again, Protestantism is tying itself in knots and contradicting itself, because we're supposed to be Bible alone, faith alone. Well, that's not in the Bible. Number two, faith alone and not works-based means as long as I believe in God, I should be in the rapture. So there should be no, well, somebody wasn't living right. And everybody sins, including Christians. So that doesn't make any sense. And also, the only evidence of God, taking people away to preserve Christians was in Noah, the times of Noah, and God took the non-believers away and swept them up. It wasn't the Christians he took away. So, and there's no example of this. Jesus never said it. That all of a sudden, you could be driving down the highway and be disappeared, and all this other stuff. This is a vision from an 11-year-old kid, and one would think that, number one, this is what got a lot of the Catholics in trouble when they had the Inquisition in America, the Salem witch trials, when kids, that's why the law, we don't like kids necessarily testifying, because they come up with all this crazy nonsense that some woman on a broomstick and just nonsense, and people gone to death. So why are we listening to some 11-year-old girl? She could have had any mental illness. She could have had any medical issue. We're not even questioning any of this. And then why are we believing that, especially in churches who don't even believe women should have any authority? Well, 11-year-old girls seem to have authority over what we believe to be true as Christians. That doesn't even make any sense. And then, more than that is, so everybody else who was, whether they were Protestant or not, just missed all teaching of the rapture. Why? Because the Bible wasn't put together that meaning that they had to decide these different things, the canonization of the Bible, nobody talked about, well, should the rapture be put in or should it be taken out? Because it didn't exist until some 11-year-old girl in the 18th century decided to say something. Why she was allowed to say it? It could be, and these are the same Protestants, and I'm not saying it's wrong, that say, well, how do we know Satan wasn't influencing that? So you are puppeting or repeating a belief system that a demon could have just put out there. You know, that's what we say to charismatics all the time. Well, even the devil can mimic miracles. So most certainly Satan wasn't the demonized girl who ran around after Paul saying true statements. She was demonized. So, and I'm not saying it's true, but I'm saying there's demonized children in the Bible who said these things, and at least what that portion that she said about him was true, she could have been saying a lot of other things. They weren't true. So just because, you get what I'm saying. That this person, there could have been a demon in this girl making her say something that's not even in the scriptures. But we're supposed to just believe that it's true? Why? It's not in the Bible. So wouldn't that be the pinnacle of demonization? I'd say satanic influence? Let's just say things that aren't even in scripture, but because some girl says it, well, all the adults are going to feel sorry for her, or whatever. Who is this girl? Why is she here? Why is she allowed to speak? Why is she influencing this grown man? Do we know what the connection is between the two of them? What's going on here? Is this, evil deeds? Why are we doing this? There's nothing here. We're not allowed to ask any questions. But we're just taking it wholesale. So I don't have to base my Christianity on something that isn't even in the Bible. And a lot of it is a fear tactic, especially when political belief systems come in. It's fear tactics for children. You might be left behind and all this other stuff, which again has nothing to do with Bible alone, faith alone. That's not what that is. If I'm a Christian, I should be in a rapture. That's not even in the Bible. So that's not sola scriptura. But anyway, I'm gonna go and I'll see y'all later.